Good morning and welcome to our first webinar of the day for the HyperSpace Generation 3 launch. My name is Duncan Beattie, I'm the Chief Solutions Officer at GB Labs, and we'll also be joined by Dominic Harland, our CEO and CTO, who'll be talking about the workflow, the way that the market has changed, the way that the demands on storage have changed, and explaining some of the logic behind the product and their algorithms and what we do. So GB Labs, a little bit about us. For those of you who don't know us, we have been providing high-performance media storage solutions since 2009. We've got a lot of customers all over the world. Media is our industry. We understand the industry, and that is exactly what our products are designed to do. We have a great products in the range. Here we're obviously to talk about Hyperspace, but we have the Space system that sits with it, our Space SSD range, which is the incredibly high performance pure SSD environment, our Unify Hub appliance for remote working and cloud acceleration, our Vault for archiving, our Echo, which is our nearline range, our second data safety net, if you like, of our range, and our incredibly popular and very successful FastNAS range, both in desktop and in rack form. So we have a product that can pretty much cover everybody's requirements. And those of you using our GB Labs products, lovely to have you join us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Dominic now to talk about the Hyperspace and the logic behind it.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Duncan. So Hyperspace has been around for some time with GB Labs, and it's always been associated with speed. So it adds a lot more speed and performance to your spinning disk space products. And really what I wanted to just cover off is why that speed matters, especially today. So if we have a look at the kind of workflows which we've been doing up until a couple of years ago or so, it was largely office-based. So we would have our storage, our edit suites in the same building, and any other high-power users would be connected directly to the central storage. So in our world of our products, that would be via Ethernet, whether it's 10, 40, 50 or 100 gig. And we would have some external things such as data recovery, disaster recovery. We might be doing external archiving, and we would have files delivered either by hard drive into the building or perhaps via some sort of cloud service file delivery system. But the majority of the production was done in the office and would typically be done within a sort of office hours as well. So if we have a look at how the work would be done over a typical 24-hour period, we can see that over the day we would generally be doing editing. So we've got a rough sort of chart here that shows that editing would pick up throughout the day, which is obviously read activities indicated by the blue line there. And they would be quite busy until around about lunchtime. People would have a break and they continue after lunch. And it would be quite often that during that break period that any new material that might come to light or need to be copied off from a nearline onto the online storage, there's a great opportunity to move that data in whilst the editors are not quite so busy over that sort of hour or so. So on the graph here, we can see the orange is indicated by the writes are indicated on there, and we can see that there's some write activity going on during the lunch period. And typical editors would then phase down during the afternoon, and the read activity would subside. And we would then start to enter sort of some administration tasks in terms of the storage. So we may bring in some ingest, some camera ingest in the evening, and that sort of again whilst users are typically maybe in the office doing tasks, and then overnight there'd be typical automated tasks such as the backing up to cloud storage perhaps at around about 100 megs a second. You'd have copies of the nearlines, perhaps RTO archives, and quite often you'd have some sort of render activities overnight as well, maybe to make either proxy files, maybe mezzanine formats or whatever it might be. And this is fairly typical. And what's nice about this is it is fairly balanced. The storage is generally either doing reads or writes at the same time. And there's a really good reason for this. And that's that spinning disks don't like doing read and writes at the same time. In fact, SSDs are not particularly fond of it either. So this pattern would be very typical of what we would see pre-COVID, and it's very useful for storage because it preserves the performance and means that you can have a sensible amount of storage to power your facility. So we can see from this picture that what sort of changed over the last couple of years. And what's really changed is that obviously people have been a little bit restricted with not being able to go into the office. And there's been various methods for solving this, and some have been more successful than others. But what we have seen is that by and large, people have moved to a model whereby they're remoting in, using something such as a desktop, for example, and controlling their machines in the office. And the importance of that is that you still have the high power workstations in the same location as the storage. And I think this has proved very essential during working out these new workflows, because it's particularly problematic if you separate the storage from any high data array users. So whether that's the render farm, the edit suites, or compositing systems, etc., they should be in the same location. That saves large data movements and also saves copying your data around the place and potentially having out of sync data sets. So this idea of remoting and controlling the systems is a very popular one. And it may be that there's a use case where some users need to copy data or do remote working in the field for that. And the advantage of this is obviously a lot of people within the media industry like having to like the idea of working from home. It gives them a great flexibility, and I think that the whole world has really worked out that being able to do some flexible working means that you can do some work in the morning, perhaps for taking the kids to school, or you can work more Monday to Thursday and have a little bit of time off on Friday, or whatever it might be. People like this flexibility. So if we now have a look at the sort of typical sort of workflow over the last couple of years, we can see that what sort of happened is some of the tasks have sort of slid together. And the reason for that is that we can see that the period where people are traditionally doing sort of the editing has spread out further. There's a requirement that people are in the office for less time, and therefore things like some backups to hard drives or ingest of ad hoc media needs to happen at closer times. And it may be that we're also having to manage our data, because there are some users that are taking hard drives home, and that data needs to be managed back. There's obviously still the usual tasks to happen. And what we can see here is that really we've not got such a nice pattern where there's either reads or writes going on. I think fortunately or maybe unfortunately, but from a storage point of view, fortunately, a lot of people have probably been processing a little bit less data over the last couple of years. We can see that the scale of this is reduced down. And that means that it's sort of masked in a way some of the problems that have been building over the last couple of years. So although we are using both read and writes higher at the same time, it means that storage has sort of kept up, or there's acceptable points in time where the performance has been lower, and perhaps they've seen that in some of the edit systems. So we can have an opportunity here to have a look at where we were compared to where we are now. And we've got the graphs side by side there. So what we can see is that now production is soon to be getting back to more normal levels. And what we've got is a much more peaky graph. So the data rates are peaking higher, firstly, which puts a stronger requirement for storage to deliver more performance. But we can also see that those peaky reads are going on for longer periods of time as people are working at more flexible hours. And it's the same with the writes. The writes are coming in a little bit more ad hoc, whether that's internal writes or people sending files from other businesses that are also working flexibly. And this has a massive knock-on effect on the storage. And this is really where performance and speed matters in today's workflow. It's not so much the out-and-out performance that something can deliver. It's the ability to keep up with this style of workflow, which is very much about delivering a good and the ability to deliver a high performance in terms of the reads, whilst maintaining a good performance of the write side as well. And that's really why we've upped Hyperspace to the Generation 3. So Hyperspace Gen 3, what does that do for us? It works in a very similar manner to previous generations of Hyperspace. So it sits almost invisibly to the end user on top of the space platform. So they will still see all of their files, and there's no manual management required of Hyperspace. It should really be seen as an accelerator on top of our spinning disk product space. And what this allows it to do is give a boost performance of an additional up to sort of 6 gigabytes per second when used in conjunction with the Space Plus, and it gives around about 4.5 gigabytes per second boost when used with a standard Space product. But the really key thing here is that, as we've learned in the past, the Hyperspace really is there to deliver the read performances, and the way that the algorithms have been written and enhanced for Gen 3 means that it's very, very efficient at having that data ready that can be read on the network for your high power users. And this leaves hard drives typically free to accept any writes. So in the real world, this system is quite happy to deliver over 4 gigabytes a second in read performance, whilst that's available to take on 1.5, or perhaps even 2 gigabytes a second in terms of writes. So what we've learned about the difference in workflows, this is incredibly suitable for today's management. It gives an immense amount of flexibility to users who want to be able to just get on and work and not worry about why their central storage system isn't behaving properly. So I'm going to hand back to Duncan, who will explain a little bit more about what these numbers mean in terms of streams and go through some more benefits of the Hyperspace Gen 3.
Lovely, brilliant. Thank you, Dominic. Yeah, some really interesting insights there into how the workflow has certainly changed, and the way systems are drawing on the performance or drawing on the performance that they need. And a lot of it's invisible as well because this workflow has just happened. So yeah, great. Thank you very much. So moving on to some of the performance side of it. So those of you who know us of old know about our stream counts. We've had these since very, very early days to show and guarantee what our products can do. So the stream counts are there to show the unique video streams that we can provide off our product. So you can see, if you perhaps look in the middle of the ProRes, 444, 30, 330 megabit. So a space system will deliver 19 streams off a spinning disk set, and that's simultaneous read of individual files when everyone hits play at the same second. So maximum simultaneous draw, if you like. Adding the hyperspace and adding that boost on read is what happens here. So you can see at that codec that we were looking at there, it's added another additional 109 streams, giving a total figure there of 128. So as Dominic mentioned, how does this work? This is accelerating the reads, and that's what Hyperspace is designed to do. And in fact, we have many customers whose whole system is running from the Hyperspace layer, and their disks are really doing very little until those writes hit. And as Dominic explained earlier, that environment where you've got multiple writes coming in, a lot more with the new workflows, that really, really does benefit the product even more. It really provides that performance. So this is with the space system. And those reads are generated from the most busy data, so a read boost, and adding about 4.5 gig of per second of random I/O. The Space Plus, which has an enhanced hardware set underneath and enhanced algorithms, and their infrastructure, this actually gives a further boost again. So that 44430 is now at 171 streams, up from 128. So those of you purchasing a Space system have an option to, at around 160 terabytes, move over to a Space Plus environment as well. So you can choose to buy one of those. Adding a Hyperspace gives an extra boost. So really, really impressive figures. Now, it's not just performance that really relates to this. So what we're going to talk about as well is about the environmental considerations of our product. So we're taking our product against effectively a generic SAN. So to deliver a huge amount of performance to our clients, we have a Hyperspace, a Space Plus, and a switch. So you can see there that that's taking around 80 watts of power from the Hyperspace, around 350 from the Space, and 100 watts from the switch. Now, this product, as you can see from those performance figures, is delivering a huge amount of performance, lots and lots of read performance, random I/O, random access, and catering for those simultaneous reads and writes, which Dominic was explaining earlier. And to be able to produce this in a SAN environment, we need an awful lot of hardware. So you need metadata controllers, one and should be having two. You've got the metadata storage set in between. So we've got the SAN environment, and be able to produce that many simultaneous reads and writes and performance, you're going to have quite a few disk sets under there. So we've kind of worked out need about 6 in this environment. You have your fiber switch, your Ethernet switch, and your NAS head if you want to do any SMB shares. So totaling all of that up, you're looking at nearly 2,000 watts versus just over 500 for hours. If you then total that up over the lifespan of the product, that can introduce a lot of costs, especially with the way that energy costs are rising at the moment. But it's not just about energy. You've also got to talk about rack space and cooling. So we're using 5U of rack space in that environment, as opposed to 27U for a SAN. That has a consideration on overall cooling, the cost of cooling all that equipment, plus the rack itself. You know, you have to go and buy a huge 42 rack and have a bigger room to be able to have all that kit in there. So there's a lot of environmental impact or environmental reduction using GBLabs kit, because we just need a lot less equipment to deliver that performance. And this is key to what we've been talking about. You know, Generation 3 Hyperspace not just delivers the performance, but also helps with that environment. You've got less hardware to get the same results, less to ship and less to run, and ultimately less to dispose of at end of lifespan. You know, we have powerful software, less hardware, and longer lifetime to recycle. So, you know, these are all very, very important things to consider in a modern environment, working environment. Also, the consideration of deployment. As with all GBLab systems, Hyperspace is set to get up and running in very little time. So be up and running in less than 30 minutes. You know, not only to the users is the Hyperspace layer, I would say, invisible, but it's just no visibility of it. It just happens. Also with the storage block as well. So very easy to plug into a switch system and set up. We can also pre-configure IP addresses as part of our build set if that's something that clients need to ease that deployment. So Hyperspace has been around since 2014. And 2018, we did our Generation 2 with a speed boost. And now in 2022, we're releasing Generation 3. And these are some of our proud owners of Hyperspace, we'd probably like to say, but yeah, some great clients that we have running these products, and they've really seen the benefits. We did a great webinar recently with Cherry Duck Studios in London. So there's a small video clip I'm going to play here with a small outtake of that webinar, which you can request to watch if you'd like to, just to go through and have a little chat about it.
When we built the Nest, we wanted to make sure that it was future-proofed. So we made sure that it was all fitted out for Cat City networking, which means we can offer 10 gig to all the suites. For the Nest, we have a space unit with 76 terabytes alongside a Hyperspace SSD cache. When we upgraded our space system, we had the option to add in the Hyperspace SSD caching, which has dramatically changed how we can kind of use the data. Obviously, having 76 terabytes of active storage is great, but you know, we run through a lot of data, especially a lot of the projects we're doing now. We're shooting in 4K, we're shooting in higher bit rates and HDR, so we really need to think about archival of this footage. A lot of our projects are very collaborative. It's never just a single editor. You know, it goes through each different stages, whether that's grading, mixing or offline or online edits. So we need to have multiple people and multiple stations working on the same material. So having everything networked and getting the same speeds and throughput as if we're working on an SSD locally is just a massive benefit. So we never have to think about how we cache this or how do we create preview copies. You know, it just gives us that flexibility to just crack on with the work.
Yeah, a great webinar. If you guys want to catch up with it, please let us know. We can ping your link, look through our social stuff, and we can share that out to you. Really, really good webinar, worth watching. Lovely customer, amazing environment that they've got there. Before we head into the questions, I just wanted to cover off that, yes, we're traveling again. It's fantastic, great to be out there. So some of our team were over in the Nordics this week, thoroughly enjoying the very sunny but still cold weather. So we're off to the media production show in London. ISE in Barcelona, CABSAT, NAB back again, and we've also got the BSC Expo as well. So if you're traveling as well, please come and see us, but watch out for lots of lovely stuff from our marketing team, all sorts of stuff coming on social, stories and events and things to attend and have to look at. So lastly, we're going to head into the questions. So while I put the questions panel up, I'm going to have a quick look on the questions section and see what we've got come in. So, right, first question in here is, are you saying that people today, are you saying that today people are doing more work than they did pre-COVID? I don't think we're saying that they're doing more work. I think what we're saying is that the way they do their work has definitely changed. Certainly in those graphs that Dominic was showing earlier. You know, you can see the traditional workflow was turn up to the office, work a bit, then have a bit of a lunch break where perhaps some other stuff's coming in, and then you go on. But now that people are working from home, particularly with, as Dominic mentioned, with some like Jump Desktop or whatever, if people are remote controlling their systems at work because they need to be next to storage, because that's the only way you get true power is being right next to storage, then there's no way to really predict that. People have lunch at different times. People might be in a slightly different time zone. They might take the dogs for a walk in the morning and then start working at 10 as opposed to getting to the office at 8:30. You know, so I think that people are probably not working more, but the way that it's work's changed. But then what that means is you end up with a consistent boost in performance because people are being able to create more data. So yeah. Dominic mentioned it accelerates data. How does it know what to move to hyperspace? Okay, that's a good question actually, because we don't move the data to hyperspace, we copy it. And I think that's a key thing here is that, you know, we know and we can work out which is the most busy data, and we can then make sure a copy of that is in the hyperspace. So we're not moving the data, it's not tiering it in a traditional way, which is why this is so different. Meaning that when you come back and request that data, we know we have it in the hyperspace layer, we can deliver it. And I think that's key as to how powerful this thing is and what it does. What software does the client workstation need to use a space in hyperspace? Absolutely nothing. As with all of our products, there is no client software required. That's the transparency of this hyperspace layer, is that the user has no idea that their data is being accelerated. We do, and we accelerate it, but the user doesn't. They are working on projects that are the most busy data. So if something sat on the storage for 3 months because it's not being used and suddenly it becomes the most important, we can recognize that and we accelerate it. And I think that's really, really key as to how this thing works from a user's point of view. In other words, they have no idea it's there. How is Hyperspace different from other SSD caching? Yeah, good question. I think that's probably relating to a little bit what I just said. Most SSD caching environments will try and move data to a caching layer or to a faster tier. And often, for example, if you're working on a long piece of video on the timeline and you start reading that file, traditional caching systems will go, well, hang on, I'm using that file, I better move the whole thing into my caching layer. But you don't need that. You don't need the whole file. You might want some of the bits of the file. You know, 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, you're jogging and shuttling on the timeline. That's what you need to work from. So why would we move the whole file when we only need to make sure we have a copy of the most active data? And any extra data you need is immediately read off the disk set and then becomes most active and therefore then becomes accelerated. So it's very, very transparent and incredibly powerful. What's the difference in performance between Hyperspace 2 to Hyperspace 3? So Hyperspace 2 added around 2 to 3 gigabytes per second in terms of performance. Added around sort of 2 to 3 gigabytes of performance to it. The HyperSpace 3 will actually, around the latest generation, will actually allow a boost of nearly up to 6 gigabytes a second, certainly on the Space Plus. So that's the key difference between the 2 and the 3. It is, again, another boost in performance. It's not only just the algorithms, but obviously the new hardware we have with Space and Space Plus on the 2022 systems that we're shipping, or 2021 as well. I have a space that we bought in 2019. Can it take the new HyperSpace? Absolutely. We've actually made sure that the HyperSpace 3 is compatible back to older systems. And technically will run on our earliest HyperSpace solutions around 2014. But the key thing here is that you will not get the performance. So you will still get considerable performance on the 2019 system if it's the latest hardware. So late 2019, early 20 and 2021, you'll have new hardware and you'll get full performance. So if you're interested in that, please give us a call and we can talk about how much performance you get. Or maybe it's worth considering actually the new Space and Space Plus combination with that HyperSpace to get a huge boost. Can I attach HyperSpace to a SAN? No, you can't. It's probably the easiest way of saying it. HyperSpace's technology is designed to work exclusively with our storage system. It's incredibly important that we know how it works and what it's doing. You know, in a SAN environment, we do still have many customers migrating from SAN over to us, which is why we have a product like the Echo Bridge, which allows you to recycle your SAN storage and reutilize it. You reutilize that SAN data, that SAN storage as a nearline while you migrate onto a HyperSpace. So it doesn't actually work with a SAN, but it can certainly replace it. It's probably the best way to put that. Okay, cool. We're coming up to the end of the half hour. Thank you very much for your time. Really great to speak to you all. Please reach out to us, have a look at what we're going to be releasing, not only on social, but on our LinkedIn profiles and on the website. We've got some great stuff coming up. HyperSpace Gen 3 really is the next level up for Hyperspace. And don't forget, we've had this product around since 2014. It's a very proven technology, but these new algorithms really take it to the next level and the new hardware. So please reach out to us, reach out to GB Labs and your reseller. And we can talk about it in the future. So thank you very much for your time again. Many thanks, goodbye, and watch out for a link for the recording. Thank you.